and thank you for joining our Zoom Live today on NAD. My name is Brianna Thompson, and I am with Viktor. I will be your moderator today. Viktor provides an array of services such as brand management, website design and development, business transformation, social media, and live event support. Throughout this live, there will be a QA button at the bottom of your screen. So if you have any questions, please ask them there, and we will address them at the end of the session. If you are joining us from Facebook, please ask your questions in the comments section. I am so excited to introduce our speakers today, Owens of Delos Therapy and Dr. Kiran Chekka of Opulence Modern Medical Artistry. Eric is the co-founder of Delos Therapy and is a decorated table tennis athlete who has competed in 6 world championships, 3 Pan American Games, and, fun fact, he was inducted into the U.S. Table Tennis Hall of Fame in 2015. Alongside Delos Therapy, he is also the co-founder of Delos Robotics and Delos Institute. As many of you know, Delos Therapy is a precise, innovative therapy for chronic pain, muscle stiffness, and athletic injury, where pressure is applied to the entire length of the muscle to restructure the collagen buildup within the fascia. This helps restore pliability so you can move easily without pain. Other benefits of Delos Therapy include elimination of tightness, restored range of motion, increased strength, flexibility, and power, and real pain relief. We also have with us today Dr. Kiran Chekka. Dr. Chekka is a double board certified interventional pain physician and anesthesiologist at the standout medical spa practice Opulence Modern Medical Artistry in West Loop, Chicago. He is proud to offer cutting-edge treatments, including ketamine infusions for depression and the all-natural NAD treatment as an outpatient service. With over 50 years of training and experience in state-of-the-art aesthetics, modern wellness techniques, clinical psychology, and anesthesia and pain services, the team at Opulence Modern Medical Artistry is bringing a whole new concept to West Loop, Chicago. They aim to elevate your experience to a whole new level with only the safest techniques and most innovative technology. Well, thank you both so much for being here today. Without further ado, let's jump in. So to start, Eric, can you give us an overview of what NAD is?
Yeah, and so NAD is a very interesting molecule. A lot of people don't even know it's in every single cell of the body. There's a long history of medicine using NAD, and I think it's really come into the mainstream more recently. NAD is so important that if we actually lose some of the concentration of NAD, our cells would cease to exist. And so we use and consume tremendous amounts of NAD. It's become really popular recently for anti-aging and longevity benefits because, as we age, there is a deterioration process that's happening. And we know when the concentrations of NAD decrease, it's associated with many of the hallmarks of aging. So some of those could be like genomic instability, so essentially DNA damage, inflammation, mitochondrial dysfunction. It's associated with many of the hallmarks of aging that people are really studying. And so I think it's very exciting and interesting that there are now ways that we could augment or replenish our NAD reservoirs, because what we do know is when we're younger, our NAD levels are very high. And that's why our repair mechanisms are so good. We do a little bit of damage based on environment, UV radiation, diet, stress, you name it, but our repair mechanisms are so strong. And so we actually don't really even notice that there's some damage. But 20, 30, 40, 50 years, we start to notice that there's a little bit of damage. We start to notice that we have some wrinkles here and there. We might feel stiff. We might get some medical tests and our blood work isn't what we like it to be. And so we know that there is an aging process that's taking place. And the latest research is really showing that these repair mechanisms consume NAD. And if we can keep NAD levels high, it makes our repair mechanisms more efficient. But what happens is the repair mechanism, since it uses NAD, it consumes it over time. And so when you look at concentrations over time, there is a sharp decrease. As soon as there's a decrease, our NAD levels drop, our repair mechanisms don't function like they used to when we're younger, and we age at a more rapid rate. So that could be brain function, that could be skin, that could be muscular function, which is really my passion. So a lot of the associated problems that people are having with aging, when you look at it from a molecular or a biochemical level, it's really coming down to altered repair mechanisms that are deficient in NAD.
Wonderful. So,
go ahead.
Yeah, so Dr. Chekka, what are some of these benefits of NAD?
Well, I think the benefits are really taking off from what Eric has just said, a plethora of different things that can benefit you. And really, when people ask me, well, what can NAD do for you? There's a list that's 100 answers long. And the reason is because we really look at NAD as a whole body regenerative medicine. People most commonly are aware of stem cell treatments, and stem cells are a regenerative technique, but you really can use it focally. Think of this as stem celling your whole body. And not exactly like that, but really the idea is that when we infuse your body with a high dose of NAD, we get you to the point where your mitochondria, which are the power plant of the cell, the engine of the cell, if you use a car analogy, is working optimally. Think of it as rocket fuel for your body. We don't tell the body what to do with the NAD. We don't tell the body where to move the fuel that it's generated, but the body uses it to repair damaged and suboptimally performing tissues. And this can be anywhere from organ function, musculoskeletal health, or even brain function. As an example, a lot of people complain about brain fog and just not being so sharp as they get older, or after an injury, or after an anxious period of time because of the COVID pandemic. We just find that our brains kind of just don't work optimally. And what's happening really is at the cellular level, a lot of cells are just not putting out the neurotransmitters that they should be putting out, particularly when we use this medical term anhedonia, or the inability to feel pleasure, or kind of general malaise and sadness, that sort of thing, and the lack of that quick, sharp brain function. We think that it's cells not producing dopamine and serotonin, which are feel-good neurotransmitters, and rather than using antidepressants, which are just pushing that cell to try to create a little bit more of this neurotransmitter, we want to heal those cells and let them naturally release the neurotransmitters that they release. And this aids you in just being a little bit sharper, having a general feeling of wellness, a little bit of a mood elevation. A more extreme example of this sort of pathology, if you will, is post-addiction recovery. A lot of people, particularly in the era of the opiate epidemic in America, are suffering. And we at least have gotten out of the system the judgment, but we still always say, well, why do people relapse so much? But as an example, a lot of people are relapsing because they just don't feel good. It's not because they want to go back to heroin or OxyContin. It's because they have this kind of zombie-like inability to feel pleasure, inability to feel joy in life, because the circuitry of the brain, particularly the reward circuitry, which makes you feel good if you were the Super Bowl winning quarterback, is not there. So no matter what happens good in your life, you can't feel pleasure. And with NAD treatments, what we found is that this circuitry in the brain starts to just work better naturally. So again, we're not using chemical antidepressants. We're not altering the biochemistry of the brain, except to heal suboptimally performing neurons. And remember, the big thing about neurons and cardiac cells and things of this nature is we have the neurons that we had when we were kids for the rest of your life. So if we kill a neuron, there's not a new one that steps up and takes over for it. So I really am passionately a believer in trying to prevent the aging of the brain in any way possible. I think we've got a million different options, and our techniques continue to get better and better to make sure your knee doesn't hurt or your hip doesn't hurt. But when you're 80, do you really want to sit comfortably with a brain that doesn't work? And I certainly don't. And I think that's a big thing looking to the future is how do we increase our longevity, but also make sure our mind follows with the body.
Yeah, and I love that. I love how, things that come out of old therapies translate to modern medicine. And NAD, this has been around for decades for drug addiction, and it's been a mainstream treatment. where people that had a ton of difficulty getting off whatever substance they were addicted to, and they would do NAD infusions, and within a week or so, it was like a miraculous cure. And it's really been almost segmented into that field for a long time. And then over time, some groups of scientists from around the world have discovered, hey, well, wait a second, this has profound changes on the architecture and the function of the brain. What would happen if we used it in relatively healthy individuals? And let's see what happens. And so it's really made its way to more mainstream medicine. It's still probably more cutting edge. A lot of people haven't heard of it. A lot of people don't even know your body produces NAD naturally. It is a substance that's so important. Like I was saying in the beginning, your cells can't function without it. So you don't necessarily need an outside source. Your body produces tremendous amounts of it. And you can get precursors from food and diet. Fasting is a way to increase naturally NAD levels. Exercise is a way to increase NAD levels. The problem really becomes is as we age, the amount of damage exceeds our ability to repair. So the pool of NAD becomes depleted. And when it becomes depleted, that's when we run into problems. And so that's when some proper supplementation to replenish these pools that are naturally in our body, and it's just not enough. The repair mechanism consumes so much, it's not enough to get it from diet. It's not enough to get it from oral supplementation. We need a little bit more of a boost. And so it's been wonderful to be able to get a few of the NAD IV infusions with you, Dr. Chekka, because I definitely noticed a difference. It's a very interesting experience as well.
Eric, can you go into a little bit more detail? What is that like to get the NAD treatments, and how do you feel? What are these benefits that you instantly feel walking out the door?
Yeah, and so when I started looking into this, I actually started down the route of oral supplementation. There are a few companies out there that are making formulas for oral supplementation. The dosages, when you take a deep dive into the research, the dosages are not enough to really make any difference. And most of the models that they're really studying it's wholly and solely in white blood cells. So any kind of change, they're really only noticing in white blood cells. They're not noticing it being uptake by the brain cells and the neurons and the muscle cells. And it really comes down to there's a dose-dependent response. And the dosages of the oral supplementation and having it to go through the gut and get into the bloodstream and have it converted into the liver to other substances so it can go into your cells, it's a complex process that I just don't think we're there yet with oral supplementation. So as soon as I started reading that, I was thinking, this is an expensive supplement that I'm taking. I do a lot of things, so it's hard to say if I really noticed anything. But after I really looked into the research, it was clear to me that the oral dosages were just not enough. It was like 10 to 20 times what I was taking or what's commercially available. But then I started looking and realized, hey, there were IV infusions of this, which is really just directly going into the bloodstream to see what would happen. And so I did some more research. There's a lot of people that are doing it. And that's how I got hooked up with Dr. Chekka, was able to go over and try it out. And he does a really large dose. It's a super physiological dose. It really saturates the cells so that it can take up the precursors or take up some of the NAD directly. And it's an interesting experience. And so it takes a few hours. So, there are some interesting side effects what Dr. Chekka can talk about, but it's a little bit uncomfortable. It's definitely some chest tightness, a little bit of sort of out of breath. I know a lot of people talk about it like butterflies in your stomach, but sort of like the uncomfortable side effect of that. But the good news is you can control the intensity of the side effects. And so an average IV infusion probably takes about 4 hours. Let's say that's average. If it's too intense, you can actually turn it down and take 6 or 7 hours. It takes a long time. Bring a laptop, bring a book. If you want to be, aggressive, you can do it in 2 or 3 hours. It'll just be a little bit more uncomfortable. But one thing that's interesting, as soon as you turn it down, the side effects are gone instantaneously. It's not something that you have for 45 minutes or a headache or anything. So you control the rate at which the medication is being dripped into your body. You can find a comfortable level. For me, it's probably 3.5 hours. I bring some work, get some work done. But what you'll notice afterwards is definitely a boost in energy levels, definitely a boost in just mood, cognition, just an overall sense of lightness and just feeling really good, feeling like all of my cells are functioning better. Workout recovery is better. Workouts in general are better. I feel more hydrated. I just feel that my cells are functioning at a higher level than they were beforehand.
Yeah, and I think back to what you said, I really think that the higher doses of NAD are essential. I think when we put people on a full 1 gram dose, and doses are low as 250 milligrams at other places, I try to do a full 1 gram dose on everyone. And I use a lyophilized product, which is the kind of Rolls Royce of products. It ships as a dry powder. It's got a great bioavailability even months later, even though we use it within a week. And the idea here is if this was your NAD level at 20 and this is you at 40, we're trying to get you way above where you were ever at. This is superhuman, super normal amounts of NAD in your body. And what that does is really drives your body into an anabolic or rebuilding state. And again, we're not talking about steroids. When I say anabolic, that's kind of what triggers in everyone's heads, but we're not talking about altering your hormonal balances or anything like that. We are just naturally refueling and repowering, re-energizing the body and allowing it to rebuild itself. And obviously, when we're putting you in a certain state like that, like Eric said, there's side effects. The side effects are really all over the spectrum. And I wish I could predict who is going to have a tough time and who's not, because there are people that want to get out of here in 45 minutes and they feel fine. I actually tend to slow that infusion down to at least 2 hours to try to saturate every tissue in the body. And there's some literature showing that it takes up to that much time to maximally saturate all tissue reservoirs in the body. Because to me, it's very important to get the brain effects, the body effects, and even in theory, the reparative effects to subclinical organ damage, to liver, kidneys, things like that. The side effects most commonly all have to do with nervous system hyperactivity. When we infuse NAD at the levels we do, the nervous system really turns itself on. One of the people that really has talked about this a lot in the public sphere is Joe Rogan. And for those of you who follow Joe's podcast, you know that he kind of tends to push the limits sometimes. And one time I believe he did a large dose extremely quickly, maybe even an IV push. And to paraphrase and take the language out, he basically said it feels like getting struck like by a lightning bolt. But that's because he went so fast. If you go slow enough, you can feel almost no side effects. And this is why I don't rush these infusions. And I, generally speaking, try to leave a lot of space between patients so that if you are a slower infuser, that's fine. We're not like, hey, clock, let's get you out of here. I just don't like that for the experience. And generally, also speaking, almost everyone, once they do the first one, the second one, the third one, repetitive infusions tend to fly much quicker. And I think a small percentage of that is psychologically and mentally understanding what it is and being prepared for it. It's easy. But then the second part of it, which is really the big part, I think, is your body actually physiologically gets used to it. And you kind of fly through it. And like Eric said, it's those chest tightness, we call that esophageal sphincter spasm, and the splanchnic nerves, or the nerves in the gut, really tend to be hyperactive. And just to use the Super Bowl winning quarterback analogy, I think imagine that same quarterback probably had a lot of butterflies in his stomach and was having stomach churns just before the game. And I think that's kind of the symptom that most people feel. And anything can really happen, but the bottom line is that we're always prepared to treat all side effects. And if there is anything, we can treat it. You have an IV in place, so if there's a little bit of nausea, we can give you an anti-nausea medicine. I don't think I've ever given anything else to somebody, and even that is very rarely, because the easier solution is slowing down the rate. We almost even let patients control their rate just a little bit once they get comfortable with it. And people tend to fly through it. And like Eric said, I've got people that come in with books, magazines, computers. I have people that do conference calls and business meetings with the IV in, and we're okay with all of that. And I think that's the easiest way to make a few hours fly by, and we try to keep everyone comfortable and make sure they're having a good experience.
Yeah, I know the first couple of times that I did it, it took me about 4 hours, and it was pretty uncomfortable, and I was all over the place with the rate. I would like, give me more, and then, within 30 seconds, it's like, no, turn that down. I can't take it anymore. So you're kind of going up and down. The last time when I was there a few weeks ago, I did it in about 2 hours. I had a very steady, minimally uncomfortable drip where I could get work done. It was actually a great experience. It was super easy, super smooth. And then you leave and you're rejuvenated. And I think it's something that everybody should look into and read about. Do your own research, but take some of the information here. and understand the decline of NAD is happening to everybody. And it's so important to keep those levels high. Whether you're doing it with infusions and you're doing it with fasting and proper diet and exercise, why not do all of those at the same time to keep those levels high? Because it will just keep you running at the highest level at all times. You won't really feel run down. And if you are feeling run down, that might be a time to actually get a higher dose to repair everything and give you a boost.
Yeah, and kind of bouncing off what you said, I'll give you my experience because I too am a big proponent of fasting. Eric's done like a 2-week fast. I've never done anything like that, but I do 3-day fasts once a quarter, and I'm trying to train my body to be able to do much longer fasts, and I think I'm ready to try one. But my last NAD infusion was right before our, actually I shouldn't say my last one, but this is an interesting experience. I've done them since, but right before the quarantine, I was doing a medical mission in Kathmandu, and I really wanted to do a prolonged fast when I'm coming home to boost my immunity. I think there's a lot of benefits to the immune system from a prolonged fast. But unfortunately, I really wanted to get it done before we had a lot of cases in Chicago. And the only way I could do it was by fasting with my last meal on the airplane. And that was a rough fast because I had been sleep deprived, traveling for almost 2 days and jet lagged. And I was just kind of beat up. Normally after a fast, I feel like $1,000,000. And because of all these other X factors in there, I was really struggling. And I ended up doing an NAD infusion right after this fast completed. And I felt like a new human being. I got my circadian rhythm back. My brain fog was cleared. I felt even like my gut was restored because I was struggling to actually reintroduce foods or refeed after the fast. And everything was a piece of cake afterwards. I had my personality back. People could actually see I was struggling, So it was a really profound effect for me. But normally, like Eric said, fasting does improve your NAD levels. It's just to a human level. And what we're trying to do is bring you up to something you could not achieve no matter what you did with oral supplementation and good healthy living like fasting, regular exercise, and all these sorts of things, and vitamins, things like that you should be doing anyway.
Yeah, and I'll share my brief anecdote that now that I'm thinking about it, the first few infusions I did with you that took about 4 hours, I was in a normal fed state. The last one I did a 5-day water fast. I think I was on day 3 or day 4, and I knocked it out in 2 hours, and it was completely comfortable. So I don't know what the science would be there, but for sure, I think I've done, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 with you. The first couple were a little bit long, a little bit rough, but the one that I did during a 5-day fast was much, much more tolerable.
We should do it together next time. I'm going to do that.
Yeah, I like it. Let's do it. We need to do a 14 or a 21 day, right? We got to up it to the superhuman levels.
Exactly.
All right. Well, we do have quite a few questions, so let's jump into some of these. All right. The first one is, if NAD goes into the bloodstream, how long do the benefits last? How often do you need to get infusions to maintain these benefits?
That's a great question. So one of the things that is kind of counterintuitive to people is that normally when we do what's called like a loading phase, we're trying to get the level from here to here and maintain it at a higher level forever. And that's how we load. But the reality with NAD is that if we did a series of infusions over a week and then a couple weeks later sampled your blood, assayed your mitochondria to see if NAD levels were elevated, NAD levels might be elevated slightly, but not to these astronomical levels. What we're getting during this loading phase is actually a rebuild and a reconstruction of your body. Going back to exactly what Eric was talking about with the natural aging processes. And what you're seeing is all these cells and every organ and every tissue in your body is just wearing down over decades. And in that loading phase, we're trying to rebuild you back to where you were when you were 20, in theory. And once you're rebuilt, if you will, then we want to maintain at that level. So each time we do an NAD infusion, we're not trying to achieve an NAD level that's super normal or superhuman forever. We're trying to actually get the regenerative medicine effects of the NAD. And typically, we advocate for anywhere from 3 to 5 infusions as a loading phase. And again, you don't have to be living in our office every day. The loading phase, in theory, can be 2-3 weeks, or ideally 1 to 2 weeks. And honestly, when people sometimes start to notice a profound benefit after 1 or 2 infusions, we don't continue to load them when they say, "I feel great." I don't feel like, well, let's keep giving you infusions because that's what the protocol says. I'd rather say the goal was to make you feel great. The goal was to achieve what you wanted to, whether that was to have energy without Adderall, stop using caffeine for energy, stop smoking, any sort of things like that. Let's achieve your goal, and then we don't have to continue to load. Let's go to the monthly loading phase. Conversely, some people just advocate, the longevity medicine gurus, they advocate for infusing it even if you gain no tactical benefit or you know, ideal like goal achieved. And really a lot of that has to do with what Eric also was alluding to earlier on in DNA repair and DNA repair mechanisms. There's molecules in the body that are called sirtuins. Sirtuins are nearly completely NAD dependent. And a lot of people have done a lot of basic science research talking about NAD and sirtuin activation. Sirtuins, I wish I came up with this term. People call them the guardians of the genome. I think it's a cool little phrase, but basically what sirtuins do is they wind DNA real tight. DNA gets opened up when we're looking for recipes for insulin, for growth hormone, you name it, whatever molecule we need. And when it stays open, it's more prone to mutation and DNA damage. But sirtuin activation winds this DNA tight, preserving its quality and integrity. Now, you may ask, well, what does DNA damage do? Well, in most situations, DNA damage either makes the cell perform suboptimally, or the cell is performing so poor that the body recognizes it as a weak and dying cell, and through processes such as autophagy, kills off that cell. We say, well, that sounds bad. Well, no, we want to kill off bad cells. Because if the body doesn't recognize a mutated cell with damaged DNA, that could be the precursor to cancer. So one of the cool things I really want to follow as this research becomes more prevalent is there an anti-cancer effect to this?
Wonderful. All right, kind of off of that question, we have one. How many NAD IV sessions should someone get before seeing the benefits?
I'd say the majority of people are in that 3 to 5 infusion rate. I personally had a profound benefit after my very first one. And I've also I tend to have really good benefits with monthly infusions, but there are some people that it takes 5 infusions to get the benefit. Particularly if we're talking about addictionology, the sky's the limit in terms of what people do. People even do 8-hour, 2-gram infusions every day for a week. And things like that. But for general wellness, I would say about 3-4 infusions, 3 to 5 infusions, and you should notice a benefit.
Yeah, I noticed a difference in the very first infusion. I would say a lot of it depends on how depleted you are, right? So if those levels are so low, even though we're giving you a very, very high dose, it might take a few infusions just to bring you to a normal baseline and then being able to take you from there. But I would say most people will notice some difference right away, but it might take a few. But my personal experience, it was right after the first dose. It was a noticeable change.
One of the other things we also have been doing more recently to get early benefit and some, in theory, some benefits that kind of work together is we're also doing vitamin supplementation with the NAD. So a little bit of B complex. I'm a big proponent of vitamin C, particularly in a pandemic, because I think it boosts immunity. There's actually literature on vitamin C and clinical trials on vitamin C infusions for COVID, things like that. So we tend to kind of finish off these infusions with some B complex and C. I've even done it with glutathione. And I think that it kind of gets I think it boosts the effect of the NAD, but I also think that it just starts to get you a little bit of benefit earlier too.
Great. Okay, we have one here that says, are there people who should not do this?
So I tend to lean my infusion treatments towards the very medical side. I'd say, out of every 100 infusions I do, maybe 1 or 2 is hangover cure. Not that we don't want to help you with the hangover, but it's not medically interesting to me, right? So in the context of some sort of very complicated medical pathology, I tend to say, let me collaborate with your existing physician. And I'll give you an example. There is a gentleman at the University of Chicago that's considered one of the gurus of aortic arch surgery. Now, backstory on this, these are some of the most complicated surgeries that humans do, and they're very long cardiac surgeries. Nearly everybody with a long open heart surgery has some degree of brain injury or brain damage and brain dysfunction from the cardiac bypass machine. And some of this can be permanent. It's been documented in anesthesia literature for quite some time. Obviously, these patients are as complicated as they get, right? And I'm doing NAD infusions for some of these patients less than a month after major open heart surgery. So I don't do that without the doctor that is responsible for your heart also working with me as a colleague. And another one, I do high-dose NAD and high-dose glutathione infusions for Parkinson's disease. There's a little bit of literature on Parkinson's disease and NAD. We think Parkinson's disease, there's an area of the brain called the substantia nigra. When you look down at the basic research, it's mitochondrial dysfunction. So why not try and treat mitochondrial dysfunction with NAD, which is a mitochondria optimizer, and these things work. So if there's any question like that, email us, and I will tell you, hey, I feel comfortable treating you, or let me talk to and work with your doctor. And more often than not, doctors don't even know what this stuff is, and it ends up being a very interesting 15, 20-minute conversation with the doctor explaining the biophysiology of all of this. And it's kind of cool. I like being collegial with people, but specifically, the medical lingo, we use this term contraindication, meaning you absolutely cannot do it. There is no contraindication to NAD.
Great. Okay, so I know we are a little bit over time. We didn't get through all of the questions, but I will copy and paste some of these into the comment section on Facebook. So if you both would like to go answer those at your leisure, that would be wonderful. Also, for our viewers today, we do have a special offer. So Opulence is offering steeply discounted NAD infusion rate. If you are interested, please email info@opulencechicago.com with code webinar to receive your discount. Thank you both so much. This has been a really great conversation. It's been extremely informative. I really want to get an NAD treatment now. So thank you for your time. Thank you guys so much. For everyone out there as well, Eric and Dr. Chekka's information is posted. So if you would like to get in touch with them, please do.
Thank you, Bree.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Eric, we could do this again and do one on musculoskeletal benefits and performance enhancement, because both of us are really, that's our passion, is musculoskeletal health. And
I love it. This will be the precursor to that next webinar. I love it.
Excellent.
I will see you guys. Thank you.
Bye.